Hey there, and welcome to The Vinyl Verdict. Today, I am honored to introduce our very special guest, basically as special as it gets on this channel, Badfinger member Bob Jackson. And as the key figure in the upcoming release of Head First, I'm beyond thrilled that you're here and to have the chance to speak with you about this. In case anyone doesn't know, which is hard to believe, Bob's contributions to the original 1974 recording of Head First, alongside Pete Ham, Tom Evans, and Mike Gibbons, are truly iconic. And now, 50 years later, your efforts have made it possible for fans like myself and others to experience this final studio album like never before, with a proper remix sourced from the original master tapes on CD, streaming, and even vinyl. As someone who grew up listening to Badfinger with my father and my entire life, just want to express my heartfelt gratitude for all the amazing music. It's not only been a source of joy for us, but it's motivated me to play music myself. And so just thank you so much for all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. All right. But I do have some questions for you today. So we have to get into those.
Okay. Okay.
So first off, I would just love to hear this caught us all by surprise that this Head First remix was in process and was being produced on vinyl. And, what inspired that decision to remix and release Head First now after so many years?
Well, the underlying thing was that for 49 years, I was unable to do this because we just couldn't find the tapes. I was told that the master tapes, the multi-track tapes from the session at Apple, were missing. There was a gap in Warner's warehouse place and they should have been there and they weren't there. So I was told they were missing, lost, stolen. But then about a year or so ago, with a little help from my friends, I tracked them down. It was just serendipity that I happened to find them after literally 50 years of making inquiries. I mean, that sounds incredible, sounds mad, but that's the truth. Anyway, since we got them, it was like a revelation, to hear the audio, the pristine sort of audio from each multi-track and the little bits of chatter and everything. It really kind of brought it all back to me. So that's the reason it's taken so long. The material just wasn't there to do it before.
There's probably a lot of dust on them after 50 years, but the fact is, I'm glad that it still existed in someone's attic at Warner Brothers. It's kind of amazing. Were there any significant challenges in terms of, the mixing or was there any degradation?
The first challenge was I didn't get the actual physical multitracks. What I got were digital stems. Opening those digital stems was a challenge. I don't know exactly when they've been transferred to digital, but the code, the sort of file type was an old type, took a lot of ringing round and about, I would say, a couple of weeks really, ringing a lot of people. How do I open this? I can't open the files. So that was the first big challenge.
Yeah.
That was a time, to actually have these files so you could see them, but I couldn't open them. It's like, oh, no,
So close.
Anyway, but eventually I did get to open them and the quality of them was great. So it was just a matter of really cleaning and tidying them up and doing the thing that had never, ever been done before. And that was to prepare them for a mix and do all the usual stuff, produce an album. The only thing that was around was a tape from the time that the engineer had done just as a reference mix, saying, look, this is just a reference for now, just 2-track. We'll be doing it properly later, won't we? Yeah. Well, it never happened, did it? So I can't really contain my enthusiasm. I'm so delighted. It's been a labour of love, but it's been a task of a lifetime, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of suspense out there for Badfinger fans too of how these will sound. So I'm sure you're playing into those expectations. But at least having heard an early version of it, I can say it absolutely exceeded them. It's not even like some of the early stuff where all the harmonies are on one track or it's kind of bounced down. I mean, this is truly has space to breathe and you can hear every instrument.
That's right. It was on 16 track, and everything was sort of at the time was engineered really well. It was just waiting to be discovered, really. I wanted to make sure that we didn't use like modern production techniques, if you want, not to enhance the drum sound so they became, you know what I mean? I didn't want it to be today. I wanted it to fit in like it was supposed to fit in at the time, as part of the Badfinger catalogue. So we resisted any fancy panning or, any tricks, and just made it the best quality thing relevant to the 70s. And I think we achieved it, When people do get to listen to it, you will note that it's not the same as the Snapper release. I don't just mean in terms of audio. We've done some edits here and there, some little things to make it better. So it is a fresh experience, yeah. If we would have had time in the studio at the time we recorded it, we'd have been doing those things. But it was such a rush. The album was done in less than 2 weeks, as you probably know. We didn't have time for any niceties. It was just in, get it recorded, and get out again. That was our instruction. That's what we had to do. So even to be as artistic as we were, that was one thing we weren't, as a band, we weren't going to let drop. I mean, we might have been being rushed in and out, but we didn't want to compromise the product. That's what Badfinger is. So we tried to, obviously we made it as good as we possibly could. Some people at that time used to take 2 weeks to get a drum sound.
Yeah, exactly. The whole album was in there, and none of these songs have been played live or anything before that. It's unbelievable. In terms of the sequencing of the songs, those were a little different on that original Apple mix, Warner Brothers, Snapper. How did you decide the sequencing for this remix?
Yeah.
You almost got away with that.
Gosh, we went through so many things, but I think we went through a number of stages of, right, what's a good opener and a closer? The typical set list mentality trick, strong opener, strong closer. And initially, we didn't even have Savile Row at the end. I think we had Rock and Roll Contract or something like that. Anyway, then it was like, well, who's singing it? Maybe we can get a bit of a mix there, and who's doing this, and fast and slow. And so we did all that stuff. Then when we came to do Savile Row, and we realized that it wasn't really enough to work with, as people will know, it only had about half a minute when it was on the Snapper album. That's all they put on. So we thought, well, it's got to deserve more than this. So Andy and I got to work and did a kind of arrangement of it, still keeping the essential thing. 90% of it, 95% is still Pete's thing. But we did, well, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but we did add a bit of fairy dust to it. And then it became, well, that has to be the last track as a kind of memory and a homage, if you want, to Savile Row. So it was kind of like a trial and error thing, but it did take a lot of thinking about, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it either then, but I will say it was very tasteful what you had for that track. That also gave me chills.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good. Yeah, go out and buy it, folks.
Yes, please do. I do want to back up a bit and go into some of that history and kind of get more of the details going into the session. So you were in Ross. That album comes out, I think it was like April '74. Right? How did that transition work for you where you became part of Badfinger? Was there a formal rehearsal process for that Man tour, or do you remember kind of those early days?
My memory isn't the best, but I can recall that the events around that time. I was in the States with Ross doing a tour, but I left the band. I wasn't fully happy in the band, so I left. And it was such a silly move, really, because I didn't have anything to go to. So I just came back to England and kind of sat in my front room and thought, right, so what now? And then I got this telegram. It didn't even say Badfinger on it. It just said, would you like to rehearse for this band? And didn't say it was. It was like, well, okay. And of course, you can tell from that kind of, it was a telegram. You remember those? No, you don't remember those, but they used to exist a long time ago.
Read about them in a textbook.
Exactly, yeah. But that's how long ago it was. So anyway, I just kind of went to this audition, realised it was Badfinger, and I was delighted, of course. I then found out that they had been auditioning people, and so I just did my kind of hour with them. And it was a weird hour because they'd say, right, we'll play, album 2, track 4, or whatever it was, and I'd say, well, I don't know that one, and they'd go, oh, right, okay. Well, what about this one? I don't really know that one, So in the end, we kind of defaulted to playing rock and roll and blues and stuff, and jamming, and I think it was that really that kind of cemented it. There was a bit of a vibe, and everyone said, yeah, why not? This is good. So that was it in a nutshell. That was the process. Yeah.
Blended right in. And I will just say, and from talking to other fans, I have a mild obsession with this Man tour. Kind of the fact that it's a missing link in the band's trajectory that just seemed to be some of the most amazing performances that ever existed, right? And we're so curious to hear the sound that you added to a lot of those earlier pieces. What stands out about that experience of playing those 19 dates and playing as a 5-piece?
Well, for me, of course, I was the new boy and found it immensely kind of thrilling and satisfying and all the rest of it. Just after I joined, Pete had rejoined in that short period where I came in. And then we did, as you say, we did the tour as a 5-piece. We supported the Man Band, who were a big Welsh band at that time, kind of like Wales's Grateful Dead. And Mike kept on saying, we're blowing them off stage every night. From my perspective, it was great because it was just the band with an added voice, with added keys. I took a synthesizer on the road as well, like a monophonic, just a one-note synthesizer, like a Moog. It was an ARP Odyssey, I think it was. So I had that as well as the organ. Yeah, so from my perspective, it was really thrilling and great. And I think we did genuinely cook on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the pieces that stands out is that from what I've read, you didn't play any of the hits. It was kind of these more extended jams, a little bit heavier.
Yeah. I found that odd at the time, but that's what was decided. It was a mistake, a big mistake not to do that. What band with hits goes out and just doesn't play them, Just silly. But anyway, that was the consensus at the time. So being the new one, I just had to kind of vote with it.
As a fan, I'll say that's what makes it alluring is that, we hear the same 5 hits and they're incredible, but we want to hear appreciation for all this other music the band created. And it seems like you were giving that attention to the Wish You Were Here album.
So. Yes, that's right. We were doing tracks off that. Yeah.
Heard a rumor Come and Get It was played at one of the shows, which would have been like the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, I think we did play it. It wasn't every show, but I think we did pull it out of the bag for one show.
Crazy. Wow. For that tour, it was lightning fast for October 74.
Oh, yeah.
How quickly after that tour did you learn there was pressure for another album to be recorded? How did that surface?
Well, we didn't know. Actually, at the end of the tour, we had no idea. So I came back home to Coventry, which is about 100 miles away from where the guys were. And I think maybe I had a week off or something, week and a half, and then heard we've got our marching orders, Stan says get back in there. And, it's like, right, okay, well, is this? And we were all discussing it between ourselves. Couldn't quite understand the logic of it. The band's only not that long ago done an album. It's just come out. And we've just done a tour. Can't we just have a bit of breathing space? But it was very strict. Bill Collins was there. No, Stan says you've got to go in now, so get it together now. I just hightailed it back to Tom's. There was no warning, there was really no warning. Yeah, we started knocking up songs and ideas. But we were very unclear in our minds why we were doing it. It wasn't clear to us at all, except that, Stan wanted the money. Not the best mindset to have to go into recording an album with, you know what I mean? When it's just this confusion and, you've not worked your way up to it. It's just like get in there and do something.
Yeah. And in hindsight, obviously, it's very odd. At the time, you get a phone call, you kind of do it. You don't have time to even think about it. I can't imagine kind of the pressure and duress the band was under for that.
Well, that's right. And don't forget it as well, for listeners who don't know, in the interim period after the tour, Joey had left. And we did ask him, would he carry on, when we knew about the album? But no, he didn't want to know. So that was another big disadvantage. It's like, well, wait a minute. It just wasn't the best. But we made the best of it. We got on well. We worked well together as a team, I thought. And I think that's borne out by what we did manage to achieve in a short time.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I think most bands in that situation would go phone in a record, shifting gears into the recording of the album. How were those songs shared for inclusion? Were there any songs that were rejected? Hearing all the demos that each band member had at that time, it seemed like there was a wealth of material. How were they narrowed down to the tracks eventually recorded?
I can't remember the exact process to that point. Pete would have had a load, as we now know, a load of songs in his back pocket, that he could have pulled out any time. But the rest of the guys just acted very democratically, and we said we'll create something new now. We won't pick a song that Tommy's got from 6 years ago or something. You know what I mean? It was. So we decided to just create something there and then. You're right, though. There could have been various options. I can't praise the other guys too much because I was brought in. I had really no right to any say in anything, really. In a sense, I was still finding my feet. They were great kind of team players and just let me kind of do my thing. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was I thought from that time, at the time, it was a lovely gesture of everyone to be so democratic about it.
Yeah, well, and for finding your feet, you had quite an influence and pivotal role on that album because obviously, you wrote Turnaround and co-writing on Moonshine and Pass Fast. So the co-writing for
Mhm.
those songs was occurring in the studio. Do you remember how that worked?
I think both songs, me and Tom got the main structure of the songs, but we wrote the kind of sections up in Tom's attic, up in his kind of rehearsal place. And then we brought him in, and then we arranged them as a band because we hadn't had the time to do that before. So all the songs were kind of arranged by all of us at the time, which again took extra studio time. But yeah, we worked at it in a very workmanlike way, I guess, whilst trying to be artistic as well.
It seems like when Badfinger got in the studio, when the clock was ticking, it was very workmanlike and just add the layers. Every song is so complete as well.
It was just a happy thing that it was all right kind of thing
Yeah.
because we didn't have the time to kind of faff about or indeed revisit stuff.
I remember an anecdote from that Without You book way back when of Pete throwing the guitar across the room, getting frustrated with one of the
Yeah,
recordings, but
yeah.
real or not.
Yeah, no, it
Oh,
happened. No, it happened. It happened just before I arrived. I was coming back from Coventry. I think I'd had one day off. I think it was a Sunday I had off, and then I came back on the Monday. And I think it was on the Monday. I just walked in, and I saw Mike first, and he went like this, and I was, what? He said, oh, tread carefully, Pete's in. He's just gone mad. I went, what? And I walked in, and sure enough, he'd thrown this. He was trying to get it in tune, apparently.
oh,
And he
interesting.
just got the thing and slammed it. He didn't just drop it or just like, I mean, it was slammed into it. It was like, oh gosh. But we quickly recovered and got on with stuff. But I think that's indicative there. That's just one incident, but it is indicative of the pressure that all of us, and particularly Pete, was under to kind of perform and get it right and quickly, and there's no time to waste and all that business. So I think it does show a kind of the dark side of the underbelly of what was going on.
And what's amazing about that is it sheds light on the way that, like you're saying, it didn't really affect the actual music and the recording of the music. That frustration, sometimes it's in there, it's percolating, but you were able to get in there and get those takes. And then it's something as simple as tuning the guitar is the thing that you're basically on a razor's edge with the stress of those
Yeah,
sessions. Was there any
yeah.
pressure for a single specifically? I know Pete had that pressure on himself, and Lay Me Down always feels like it was written with that in mind. But was there any conversations around that?
Only really what you mentioned that Pete kind of took it on himself. You know what I mean? He felt that he had to come up with something. So he was still finishing that off in the studio. He got the main structure, but he was always there in a corner by the coffee machine or whatever, just going through it, trying to get the arrangement together. As far as kind of strategy from management, no, there was nothing because I don't think they were bothered about our future. They just wanted get in, get the money. There was no forward planning at all. Once we'd finished it, we were saying, well, Lay Me Down, yeah, Pete did good there. Let's go with that if we have to go with something. That'll be great. But of course, it never even got that far, did it?
Well, hopefully now, 2024, it's going to get some attention for the single that it should have been. Do you recall?
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Do you have any memory of which tracks were roughly maybe recorded first or last in the sequence of those 13 days or so?
I can't really recall right at the minute. I can remember that Savile Row was the last thing because we were really running out of time then. Pete's instrumental. Before then, it was back again, Mike's thing. What was the first thing? Actually, it might have been Lay Me Down. I will have a list again in my dusty attic.
Oh, obviously it's, a very historical interest given that it was the last time Pete was in the studio and the incredible music that came out of
his last sessions.
Yeah. You mentioned Savile Row. I was curious. So that one, unbelievable synth sound. So was that also the synth that you mentioned on the tour? Because it sounds like a DX7, but that wasn't even around until the 80s, right? So
no, it was this ARP Odyssey.
huh.
It was my personal thing that I brought down to the sessions. As I said, it cost an arm and a leg, it was very expensive. It only played one note at a time, and the keyboard was like 2 octaves. I mean, when you think now, it's like, what? I paid all that money for that. But I mean, at the time, it was a cutting edge thing. So, yeah, so I fiddled around and programmed this sound in, and it seemed to fit because Pete's original thing was just the piano. He got those jazz chords from his brother John, and that's all it was, really. We didn't have much time, but it was like, well, what else can we do? Well, that needs strengthening. It's not enough for just one instrument like that. It needs strengthening. That lead line needs to come out. So, yeah, I programmed that sound in, was quite happy with it. Everyone's quite happy with it. But, yeah, that was my personal thing. I just happened to bring that to the session, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think you added that on a lot of the songs. There's a synth on, I know it's on Hey Mr. Manager and Savile Row. It's on a couple of the tracks that really show you the trajectory of the band, where it was headed, I think, in the mid to late 70s, right? Do you remember, were there any musical influences around at the time or albums that the band was talking about in those 2 weeks to add that, organ and synth sound?
Not specifically. I mean, I had my own influences, of course. I came from the background of being a big Beatle fan, and I liked harmony bands. But I also I did like a lot of rock stuff, I really liked Hendrix. I liked a guy, Arthur Brown, Crazy World of Arthur Brown, which the keyboard player in that, Vincent Crane, he was like Jimmy Smith on steroids. He was just great. So I had this rock grounding as well as a love of melody and harmony, I guess I just brought my own influences to it, really.
Yeah, and definitely a blues edge that I absolutely love, that I think gave Pete a chance to really stretch out and slow down some of those songs.
Yeah, funnily enough, I had more melodic songs. And Tommy in particular, I guess, had the most to do with it initially before going into the studio, because I'd often stop with him. And he was very keen. I was showing him all these melodic things with nice chord sequences, and he'd go, "Yeah, but we got those, Have you got something rocky, And I go, well, there's this kind of thing, that kind of thing. I played some old stuff. And he went, yeah, that's it. That's what we want, So he really pushed me into doing this more rocky approach. I mean, for people who bought the Snapper Demos album in 2000, there's a song of mine on the other kind of demos disc called To Say Goodbye. I mean, I had plenty of songs like that, melodic, peaceful love songs, but Tom was very much, no, it's got to rock, bring your rock side out. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Oh, I get that. That's a beautiful song too, but it works so well just on acoustic, the way that's recorded and everything.
Yeah.
What was the atmosphere like of, being at Apple Studios, recording this, working with Phil McDonald?
I was like a kid in a sweet shop. Couldn't quite believe it, So it was very thrilling. It was in December time, pretty cold. And they were having some sort of building or repair work being done by the entrance to the studio. And all I can remember is every time you went in, they had these opaque, floppy bits of plastic, to keep the rain out sort of thing, And you had to wade your way through those to get into the studio area. So it was a bit weird. Phil was great, very efficient. I mean, he'd had plenty of practice, I guess. The two producer guys, they kind of did their thing. There was no big discussion. There wasn't, I keep saying the same thing. There wasn't time for any discussions about, well, should we do this? Or, well, let's arrange it this way. Or what kind of, there's no time for that. So we just kind of got on with it. I mean, they were there. They were going to do a mix of it. And that mix, of course, was supposed to unlock the magic money tree, and it didn't. It didn't, because Warner's just rejected the thing.
Right. And to that effect, I imagine, one of the reasons this remix is so important is that the band didn't really have much input in that January 75 mix that Kenny and Richie were working on, right?
We had none. We weren't there at all. When we finished the last thing and walked out of the studio, that was it. Goodbye. That was it. They took the tapes to America and did something with them. Mixed them, but we had no say or input at all, That's why, for me personally, on a personal level, it's great. I was there, I did it. So to be now at the other end of it and saying, now I can be on the desk as well. And we can get it exactly how at least I would have had it. And I believe the rest of the guys would have wanted it,
You have the time, right, to make those decisions and actually hear it play back a couple times.
Yeah.
I also read in that book that Joey showed up to one of those head first sessions. I think it was probably more social than anything else, but Do you recall anything about that interaction or even confirming if that's true or not?
I've got a vague recollection of it, but I can't remember sort of interacting with him at all. Can't remember having a chat with him or anything like that. I vaguely remember him coming.
Just interesting how fast everything was moving at that time, right?
Very much, yeah.
And in terms of so that preliminary mix, do you recall like the band's reactions to hearing any of those? I mean, were they at the time? I know there was so much going on, but were they proud of the work they did?
When we listened back after Christmas to what was kind of sent to us, we weren't that impressed, actually. In fact, Pete actually thought there was something wrong with his tape machine. We were all like, is that it? You know, that doesn't sound right. So no, we weren't overly impressed with what we got back. And of course, after that, there was no time or room to start talking about it because before you know it, all the legalities went on. And we were told that they'd rejected the album anyway, nothing to talk about really. And Wish You Were Here was pulled, and you're on your own, lads, And of course, the money stopped. So it was a very difficult few months, which all, of course, played into Pete getting really, really depressed.
Yeah, and I think that it was kind of proven later on that copy of the tape was defective, just to add to everything else going on. That
Right.
Yeah, unbelievable. Okay, so then maybe fast forwarding to today and looking back on all this, I'm curious, now that you've had the chance to dig in there and really see, the fruits of the labor that you did in those 2 weeks, how do you feel about the work and kind of how it plays into the legacy of Badfinger now?
Well, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm really proud of it. I'd like to be more humble about it. I am humble most of the time, honest. But I'm really proud of what we achieved in such a short time with all the pressures that we had. It was multiple pressures, and to have done what we'd done, I don't think we even realised what we'd done until on reflection later, if you see what I mean. I mean, even after the sessions in January, February, the tape we heard, as you indicate, wasn't the best. So it was just lost for years. Tommy and I would then talk about it later when we did tours later. But it was always like, yeah, that thing we did, yeah, it was pretty good, What a shame nothing happened with that, So I'm immensely proud of what we got done. And I think it did fit in. It's for everyone else to say, not me really. But I think it fits in. It basically, it's Pete, it's Mike, it's Tommy, and it's one other guy, who maybe wasn't there before. But it's those guys, and yeah, it's up to standard. I really think, and I think audio-wise now, with the techniques we've got now, audio being so good now, I think people will notice the kind of hi-fi quality of it. I think it stands alongside all the others.
Fidelity is incredible.
That's what I reckon.
I hope someone will go back and do this with the other Badfinger albums, to be honest, because it sounds like it was yesterday.
Well, you never know.
yeah, and completely agree with your, just the trajectory this was on. You got to remember, this is the same guys with Wish You Were Here, and the 6, 7, 8 months later, basically there's a through line.
That's right.
That's what makes it so hard to listen to sometimes, is all the potential that would have come, if things were different. Just the musicality of it, incredible. It must be a relief also to get it out all this time.
Oh, it's very fulfilling. I mean, I generally, up until a year ago, I felt it was hopeless. It would never come out. It was gone. It was lost anyway. And Warner said they owned it. So what could I do about that? It was hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And then, it's discovered. And then I get Warner's, after it took a long time, to kind of say, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll let you do it. So, wow. I mean, unbelievable. So I can't contain my enthusiasm for having completed it. It literally has been the work of a lifetime for me. This is the project for me that I always wanted to have out and thought it would never happen.
Yeah, and I don't think Warner Brothers was going to make it happen. We needed you to get in there and advocate for it. So pretty amazing.
No, they weren't. No, they weren't going to do anything.
So then the last piece I just wanted to ask about, you said, this is the work of a lifetime. You've done a lot of other work. You've written some amazing music, outside of all of this. But I'm curious, are there any plans or possibilities for releasing your work in the Dodgers or those guys, or any of the Goodfinger recordings as well down the road?
It has been talked about. We've had discussions about it. It's a definite maybe. No, it's it's not impossible. And yeah, I'd like to think we would.
That's great. Any chance of live performances of this material? I watched, I know your YouTube channel posted that Just the Chance video. I mean, it's amazing music to play live.
Yeah, it's great. I haven't been playing of late. I had some illness, I had some personal illness for a while. But no, again, I'd like to think we will. I think it really depends on the success of the record. You know, if only Mrs. Smith of Grimsby and Eric from Africa buys it, then no gigs. But if people get behind it and say, yeah, you know, if it's successful, then there's every chance. Yeah, I'd
Wow.
certainly like to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear it. I pre-ordered my copy, so I'm doing my part, and I hope everyone watching
Oh,
this
good man.
will do that as
Good
well.
man.
But
That's what we want. Yeah, we're into all the kind of PR end now and just trying to get things moving. So,
I saw that promotional video as well, that 1 minute clip. That gave me chills. I mean, that was incredible. Kind of the studio and some of the chatter and everything. And
oh, that, yeah, yeah,
that was
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. That was my friend Andy who plays guitar with
Oh,
me, and who's a very talented guy in his own right. I mean, he's got his own music and band going, but we've been working on this together. And yeah, I thought he made a brilliant job of that.
yeah.
And conceptually, we talked about it conceptually, you know, and we were planning to go down to London and actually get a drone and actually fly a drone up. And we were going to do it all actually with me outside, you know, rabbiting on about, you know. And in there, we thought we just can't do this. We'd have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something because it's 100 and something miles away. We can't do it. In the end, he said, leave it to me. I'll have a look at it digitally. And well, what a great job he did, eh?
Yeah. Studio
Yeah.
magic.
Support this. If you like Badfinger, give it a listen because I think you'll be surprised. It's much better than the Snapper thing. The Snapper was a 2-track mix. It was rough. This is the proper thing. So do give it a listen. And who knows what will happen in future? You know, I think there will be more stuff coming out. But get behind it and support it. That's the only way it will work.
Just a great experience to be able to put a magnifying glass up to the music that was created in those 2 weeks. Anyway, best of luck with the release. It's really a dream come true. I never would have thought in 2024 we were going to get this, and then I'd have the chance to talk to you. This is really beyond anything I
Yeah.
conceived of.
Well,
So thank you for everything.
Jacob, me neither. I never thought we'd get the chance. You
Yeah.
know, it was the last. I'd almost given up hope. It's such a joyful thing now to be able to say it's done. You know, there's a full stop on it. It's done.
And just in time for the holidays too. Love to chat again sometime, maybe on the next release or tour when you're in that stage. But you need a little break in between, so I hope you get a vacation.
No, I'd be happy to talk again. Yeah, that'd be great, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
appreciate it.
very much.
Have a good rest of your weekend and happy holidays, Bob. Great to meet you.
All the best to you. Bye now.